Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley, the heart of the great state of California. And as I always say, there's a lot of heart going on. This is an amazing place to be here in the Central Valley of California. A lot of creativity in the field of agriculture, a lot of creativity in the arts. It's an amazing thing, something that I didn't know when I first moved here, but I have learned a lot about. There's a lot of heart going on, a lot of creativity. And in that, I know that this day is an incredible gift. It was a gift that was given to me and to each and every one of us by that first cause, creator, consciousness, that which we call God, divine, gifted us this day. So before I even opened my eyes today, I gave thanks for the day, for the gift. And I set my intention that this day, as the gift that it is from the giver that is nothing less than amazingly, incredibly incredible. And one of the thoughts that went through my mind as I thought about that is, we get up and even when we give thanks and we set our intentions for the day, do we ever really stop and realize the value of this day as a gift to each and every one of us? If you think it in that term, or in those terms, that as a gift to you, what is the value of that? I mean, it's an amazing, we talk about the divine being infinite, the value of the day given to us that we so often just go through and live and express our life in the helter-skelterness of the day, the incredibleness of that gift, the value of that gift. And, when we take time and we pause and we reflect and we give thanks for that, knowing that our understanding may be limited at this point, but we are on a journey of learning, of expanding, of including more into our consciousness, more into our life expression, and as we do, we expand more, live at higher, greater degrees of livingness. And in truth, that's our purpose. So we've been going through this thing called life, written by Dr. Ernest Holmes. And we finished up chapter 6 last time. Chapter 7, I'm going to go through, probably not spend too much time on it. When Ernest Holmes wrote this, and he starts off the chapter, he says, "You do not have to grow old. It is now psychologically demonstrated that the mind does not grow old. We are just as young mentally at 90 as we were at 9. And in some sense, that is a great degree of truth, but it's not completely. But think about this. When you get up in the morning and at any other time and you walk into wherever there may be a mirror and you look out through the eyes that you use to the image in the mirror, you ever pause and reflect on the age difference between that which is looking and that which is seen? I mean, think about it. I remember years ago hearing Dr. Wayne Dyer talking about being at a beach somewhere, and he was observing this rather geriatric individual man, and he said he was like in his 90s, and a young lady, a young woman in a bikini walked by, and the guy's head turned, and Dyer said, he's still that young man. That mind that lives within is still that young man looking at that young woman. And I've given thought to that over a long period of time. I've given thought to the idea that the eyes that, the looker that looks out through the eyes that I use, my age is much younger than what the calendar tells me. And that's also a gift if we can get to that point. And that's the purpose in this chapter 7 that Holmes is talking about. He's not talking about regressing the physical aging of the body. That's a process. We talk about spirit, law, and body, and what God thinks is there is spiritual substance, that this thing that we call the law, that is that between the thought and the thing. But things come into form and they go out of form. And that's part of the cycle. And life in this physical expression is a cycle. Our purpose is to live at a higher, greater degree of livingness. But our purpose is not to stay here, but to move on from this to the next iteration in our spiritual, personal journey as the divine expressing through us as us. So don't get caught up in the idea that we're expressing a belief that the body doesn't age. Now, having said that, there's a lot that we can do mentally to keep our physical body in a much younger state of beingness than what most people do. And a lot of that has to do with mindset. It has to do with keeping our consciousness, our mental life expression healthy, happy, harmonious. Taking a creative director's role in how we express and experience life, knowing that at the center, the core of our being, that we have a source there that is bigger than anything that life could bring at us, and life is meant to bring stuff at us so that we can grow, overcome, transcend, and move on, being more powerful within ourselves and more perfect in our life expression. So he says, did you ever ask yourself the question, what is this elusive thing I call my mind anyway? What is our mind? Does it live in our body? Is it just something that's an expression based on the physicalness between our ears? There was a time when people believed that. Matter of fact, there are still people in neurosciences today that make that claim, but there's a growing sector within neuroscience that says, the mind is something bigger than the body. They don't know how to explain it, but they recognize that it's there. And it's just like with any other principle. We can't necessarily explain it, but we can recognize the effects. And in that recognition of the effects, we put that principle into practice in our life. The divine principle, the realization that we are created in the image and the likeness, the nature of the divine, that we have the ability to create and express in our life, and not only the ability, but it really is, in a sense, a responsibility as a receiver of this gift. It's like receiving, now bear with me on this metaphor, receiving like a Ferrari and driving it at one of those Autotopia things at Disneyland, and that's it. We have that Ferrari. We're meant to get out on the road. We're meant to move and grow and push the envelope, if you will. And for each and every one of us, that's a different Ferrari, if you will. We don't all do or have the desire to do the same thing, but we all have in potential the tools that we could need and want so that we can achieve that desire as we begin to learn the truth about ourselves, and in that learning the truth, putting principle into practice in our day-to-day life experience. And we can do that. And that's what this book is about. That's what living within the philosophy, the faith, the way of life that we call science of mind and spirit, or religious science. It's an incredible concept, idea, and we can own it. And in that owning, we can embody, and in the embodiment, we can be, and in that beingness, we can express. And it doesn't get any better than that. It's incredible. He says there was a time in human history when life expectancy was not much over 20 years. Now the average age has increased to more than 62 years. And today, as I'm speaking to you, it's above 70 years. Okay? And they expect that to go higher. And there's no reason why we shouldn't seek to achieve a higher, longer degree of livingness with the realization that that's not the ultimate goal. It's just if we can grab within our hearts our beingness in passion and gusto, if you will, our purpose, our individual purpose for being here, being able to express that for a longer period of time can be a very wonderful thing. You know, we learn as we grow, and we learn over time. He says, if the mind never grows old, and if it is the mind that really dominates the body, he says, why should we not expect both mind and body someday to remain almost indefinitely on this planet? Well, see, we don't have that, and that shouldn't be our goal. At the times when Holmes wrote this, the idea was a little bit different. But we've grown, we've learned more. But the mind, our mind, my mind, your mind, the one mind, it never ages. We can experience deficits in the mind as we age, that's true. But we ultimately, the being that we are is beyond that. And in understanding that the mind is not the body, although the mind expresses through our body, when things happen to the body that the mind can express at its optimal level, doesn't mean that it's not expressing. It just means that it's not, if you will, it's going into the interpreter, but it's not coming out into the expression, but it's still there. And it's amazing. He says one of our greatest psychologists says that it's a mistake to believe that the time-honored doctrine that childhood is the period in which one learns most rapidly to read, write, speak, and understand language, okay? Again, when Dr. Holmes wrote this, and the understanding of that day was that, you know, we learned at great degrees in childhood, but it didn't necessarily have to be that way. Today, we know in neuroscience that there are parts of the brain when we're born that have the capability to learn any language that's spoken on the face of the earth. But we learn the language of wherever it is that we are born. And as we get a little bit older and we're growing, we lose our ability at that level to learn language. Now, we can learn language as we get older, but you know, it's like we keep our accent. You know, we still think in the language that we originally learned, but we can learn and grow. But don't make the mistake in thinking that because that happens, limitation takes place. What it means is the brain refocuses, if you will. And just like we teach that humanity reaches a point of self-recognition, that I am moment. And from that time, the physical forces of evolution basically, not completely, but basically cease to play a major influence in the evolution of humanity. And from that point on, it's through consciousness that we evolve as the human family. And, you know, that evolutionary process has been up and down, but a gradual, a continual growth. And it's the same way in our day-to-day life experience. But it's when humanity, when the individual begins to recognize a spiritual concept, component of the livingness in the life, and begins to incorporate that in their livingness. We've discovered principles, humanity has. We haven't discovered necessarily how to put them into practice, but we're growing, and we're growing in our ability to do so, and we continue to do so, and it's awesome. So we lose certain potential capabilities, but in that evolutionary growingness, if you will, in consciousness, we learn a whole lot of new things. One of the most exciting things out of the past probably 40 years in mind science is the discovery of neuroplasticity and what that means to humanity and how we can utilize that to grow consciously and grow spiritually, if you will. One of the other things that came out of neuro studies, and this came through the Navy, studying the effect of fear and what it has in making decisions, recognizing that we've, since 1980 and the advent of the functional MRI, we were actually able to watch the brain as it thinks in real time, and we know what areas of the brain are utilized in this thinking process, and the discovery of what they call the fear mechanism. And once they discovered that, they sought to see if there was a way that we could master that, if you will, because fear is the great automator in our life. When humanity, evolved physically to the point of self-consciousness, it was fear as one of the things that allowed that evolution to take place. That mechanism is still here, and it's a primary mechanism in our physical interaction with life. The nerves that are associated with our five senses go directly to the fear mechanism part of the brain before they go to the conscious mechanism part of the brain. So that when you happen to see a snake, for example, the body reacts before the mind even recognizes the snake. So the Navy, realizing that fear played this role, and they wanted to use it in warfare, of course, for their special forces, their SEALs. They spent a lot of money, did a lot of study, and they found out that we can overcome the fear mechanism. Not completely, but we don't want to completely overcome it, but we want to make it a tool, not a master. When they learned how to do that, and I've spoken of that before, there's four major components. There is goal setting, visualization, affirmations, and what they call arousal control. In other words, consciously seeking to keep the body in a calmer state, basically done through breathing. We've been teaching this in New Thought for a long time. We didn't put it under that imprimatur, that name per se, but we have used that in our recognizing the truth of who and what we are, our relationship to that truth, and practicing the presence of God in all that we do. We're going to take our first break. I'll see you when we come back.
Ghost Golf is Fresno's most spectacular family entertainment center. It's frightening how much fun you'll have on our 18-hole indoor haunted graveyard course. Skeletons welcome you, but watch out. All sorts of creatures may come to life. Ghost Golf is perfect for scary good parties, so book yours today. You'll get free plays at the Mummy Shooting Gallery, arcades, and air hockey. Check out our party and weekday specials online and like us on Facebook. Come play at family-friendly Ghost Golf. Yeah! Good times will haunt you.
For all your real estate needs, call Julia Tadich with Clovis First, 559-323-2213, or visit clovisfirst.com. That's CLOVIS, the numeral 1, ST.com. Whether you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, get a loan, or whatever the case may be, call Julia Tadich.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
At Laulea Travels, we strive to make your vacation experience as relaxing as possible. From the time you start dreaming about it to the time you're sharing your vacation photos with your friends and coworkers. Our vow is to treat your vacation as if it were our own. If personal service, attention to detail, and years of travel experience are important to you, then let Laulea Travels plan your next dream vacation. Visit lauleatravels.com or call 559-360-1933.
A dynamic litigator, in-tune listener, and forward thinker with almost a decade of experience, Nasser Nekumanish is a skilled attorney servicing clients throughout the Central Valley. When you need a lawyer, call 559-441-0114 and ask for Nasser Nekumanish.
Linda Lee Kane is an author of fantasies, thrillers, contemporary fiction, and children's books. Order a book by Linda Lee Kane on Amazon or on lindaleekane.com. Get twice the results in half the time. Call 559-349-7934 to schedule your appointment with Clovis Fit Body Boot Camp today. and follow Fit Body Bootcamp Clovis on Instagram.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. We're going through this thing called Life by Dr. Ernest Holmes, finishing up right now in Chapter 7, getting ready to move into Chapter 8. A couple more things I want to touch on real quick. Holmes says if we take this basic idea that mind never grows old and that any apparent mental age is merely the result of not using the mind, then I think we shall begin to experience real resurrection here and now. And he's talking about a resurrection, considering that the context in which Dr. Holmes wrote in the 30s, 40s, 50s, the life that people led compared to the way we live now. It's easy to think about how, someone from the horse and buggy days would be amazed at and just unable to even understand the life that we live and the technology we have. But there's that same thing could be almost applied to people that lived in the 50s, for example. We're living in an environment that was even beyond some of their science fiction at the time. It's an amazing thing, but it's also an amazing thing how our understanding of mind, the power of mind that is available to us, and our role in how we experience and express life. It's amazing. One of the things that, and I've shared this before, when we think about mind and we think about our body, we think about the divine principle, we think about living life at a higher, greater degree of livingness. And that means living a more abundant life, which includes living a more healthful life, if you will. And in that thought, we come to the understanding that the things that we experience in life that are less than that concept of wholeness and perfection, they're experiences. We do experience them. But we can know a greater truth. We can know it for ourselves. Someone can know it for us. In religious science, we have practitioners specifically for that purpose. And in that knowing the truth, that's not, it's not like some kind of an incantation. It's a connectedness with our source. Our source is infinite. The power that God has is infinite. And the ability to refocus, I'll put it in those terms, our beliefs, or the beliefs of an individual that we're maybe speaking our word for, so that, doubts and fear and various beliefs that they may hold or held that they weren't even aware that they held, that allowed them to express an experience that is less than this wholeness that we're talking about. Okay, we can know that truth. That's relative. It's an amazing thing. It was at one time much more readily accepted than it is today. At one time, you could find practitioners holding a professional level in society equal to or possibly even greater than individuals that were in what they called the medical profession at that time. But it doesn't make any difference which side of the coin we're talking about. Medical doctors and practitioners knowing the truth for us. There's one place where healing takes place. That's the body itself. No surgery is going to heal the body. No medicine is going to heal the body. And when we talk about knowing the truth for an individual or for ourselves, okay, and we speak our word and we accept the law and the outcome, the demonstration, as being whole and so. Holmes talks about there's still a process in healing. Okay, what it is we clean the window, the opaqueness out of the window, so that the clarity of divine light can shine through. God has created this thing that we call our physical body in such a way that Everything's here for the expression of wholeness, completeness, and health. Everything is already here. It's just been muted, restricted, okay? We can let that go. We can turn it loose. And part of Holmes's concept in this particular chapter where he's talking about living longer is related to that. The body is an amazing thing. Just like the gift of today it's an incredible thing when we think about it. But the divine has designed this body that it can do things that medical science can't even begin to dream about. They try to grasp the principle and help the body in what it does. But it's amazing. So we don't need something to do for us so that healing will take place, other than to know the truth, accept the truth of who and what we are. We're awesome, and it doesn't get any better than that. So I want to touch on a couple things real quick. From the textbook on page 427, from the teachings of Jesus, Holmes asks the question why Jesus had such power, and he goes on to say, in this book, no attempt is made to discuss all the sayings of Jesus. He lived in a world of spiritual realization far beyond that of the average person, and we have any understanding. He says the spiritual things must be spiritually discerned, so the full meaning of the sayings can never be clear to us until we have attained a consciousness equal to his. And I wanted to go over that because, it's an incredible journey that this radical rabbi had in a very short period of time. What he taught, and how what he taught kind of got marginalized by what was taught about him. And that's a story for another day, so to say. But when you get down and you seek to understand what he taught, he had an incredible understanding of our relationship to the divine, to God, to truth, and he had an amazing way of speaking. When we read his words, whether you read them in the New Testament as it was translated in King James English or the New American Standard, or some of the other books that have been written that have included what he says and taught. There's been a lot that historians have taken to understand that in the original writings, yes, there were things that were edited in and out. That's not important, other than to know that what he taught was always life-affirming. What he taught was always a relationship between us and our Creator, and our ability to have access to that, not outside of ourselves, but within the core of our beingness, and our journey in getting there. The power of prayer, the power of learning the truth of who we are. He says, if you learn to keep your thought fresh and young, invigorated with enthusiasm and filled with hope, if you have a keen, enthusiastic zest for living, you will never grow old. That's a mindset, a frame of consciousness. The same with our understanding of our relationship with the divine principle. Goldsmith called practicing the presence of God, living life with zest, living the adventure of this gift today with an adventurer's mindset. What an incredible thing to get into a car and go down to your local store to pick up whatever you need and bring it home. You don't think much about it. But it's amazing. Go back to, that horse and buggy day person coming today. I happen to live in one of the more, what I personally believe is one of the more beautiful places on the earth, up in the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas of California, and pine trees, and we've got local lakes and all this stuff. And there's times when I'm making that regular drive through the forest to go from where I live to one of the local towns, and I have to pause and just stop myself and realize the awesomeness, the gift that this whole thing is from our Creator, so that we can take this gift and express, and that's our gift back to God, if you will. But in that expression, as we go through our day, is that self-realization in that expression. It's amazing. He says, let us stop thinking about dying or quitting or getting through with living, and let us learn to enjoy and appreciate the eternal here and now and the everlasting. And we can do that when we stop worrying about, when we stop doubting, when we stop letting fear be the power that controls our thought, controls our consciousness. Man shall not live by bread alone. What did Jesus teach? It's written that man shall not live by bread alone, but by the very word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Who eats of bread alone will continually hunger. To take the physical benefits of the human, board must be added to the spiritual strength of the divine wisdom. Okay, let me read this again. Who eats of bread alone will continually hunger. To the physical benefits of the human, this must be added to the spiritual strength of the divine wisdom. How do we do this? I'm going to go back just a page, read a chapter in here, or a paragraph, I mean. In final conclusion, Holmes writes, in conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him or her repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. But practice it we must, each and every day. You know, you don't think about practicing living. You know, I talked about the value of the gift of today. Well, we don't think about that oftentimes. We also don't think about the practice of living, and yet it's something we do. It's like I was just talking about driving where I live through the forest. I don't think about that sometimes. But what if we did? What if we lived in a consciousness where we stayed aware of that as we move through the day? That, you know, the value of the gift of this day, the value of the livingness that we each practice, the value of the frame of consciousness that we create within our own mind, and we are the creators. The gift that God gave us to be the power that we are in creating our life is the gift of choice, the gift of volition. After the recognition of the individualization of our beingness, okay, the next thing is recognize the power of the choice that we have. We're going to take our next break. Time's passing way too fast. I'll see you when we come back.
When you need to get fit, contact Gary Torres, IFBB Pro, specializing in weight loss, body transformations, and contest prep. Email GaryTorres5336@yahoo.com.
Hey, I'm Chris DeVold. Tune in every Friday night on CentralValleyTalk.com when I bring you Sex, Drugs, Chris DeVold, where I'll give you 3 guesses on what we talk about. And I also vow to bring you 1 live local music act a week. So tune in every week because you never know what kind of music you're going to hear right here on CentralValleyTalk.com.
The Space Colony Journals are an epic tale of a family's struggle to survive. Meet the courageous women and dangerous men who dare to carve a home on the alien world of Vensug. Get your copy today. Available on Amazon and Gail Daly's FineArt.com.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell's Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell's Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell's Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Contact Sarah Hernandez of June and Matt Photography to schedule your portrait, engagement, wedding, or next family photo session. But that's not all. Sarah is also your personal brandographer, helping you ditch the stock photos and get images that sell. Call 559-412-3721. Visit juneandmattphoto.com and follow Sarah on Instagram and Facebook.
Give your child the tools to succeed. The Yergubian Academic Center offers one-on-one and group educational lessons by appointment. Over 90% of our students show significant improvement in their academics in just 3 months. Students of the Yergubian Academic Center have gone on to UCLA, UC San Diego, Yale, Stanford, and many more prestigious universities. Schedule a tutoring session today. Call 559-437-3973.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center from Fresno, California. Okay, we're finishing up here in Chapter 7, getting ready to go into 8, but I wanted to read this last paragraph that Holmes wrote in closing this part of the book. He says, "We have been re-examining our previous beliefs in the light of new understandings, and we have every right to expect that our world, in the light of this new understanding, shall take on an aura of warmth and color, of happiness and satisfaction, of gratification and accomplishment, which our old world lacked." Was your day, that humdrum day-to-day stuff, right? Okay. He says, and we should believe that we are destined to take part in a new faith in God, which shall no longer see us as though looking through a glass darkly, but open-faced, and we shall see more completely the sense and that the divine benediction which is ours, after which an endless ages men and women have sought peace on earth and goodwill towards all. In other words, the first part of the book, he's kind of laying out the case, if you will, addressing how we got to where we are. And even people that have lived what some people consider successful lives, often within that livingness, there's a lot of, I'll just say, disharmony. And it could be in many areas of one's life. Just because you can amass a quantity of something and be successful in that amassing doesn't necessarily make you a successful liver of life. And we're here to be successful livers of life. And so as we move into this part of the book that he put together, we're now into and he's going to be giving examples. I'm probably not going to go into them to a great extent, maybe address them a little bit, because examples they do teach, but we could spend the next several months getting through the last part of this book. And although I enjoy kind of really drilling down on that, I want to encourage you to go out and get the book yourself if you don't have it already. Read it in conjunction with watching our various segments as we've gone through this. It's your life ultimately. No one else can live it for you. You can watch these shows, you can read books, you can go to your centers, you can do all sorts of things, but you walk the journey. You make that connection. You can learn. But I want to refer back again to that I read out of the end of the general summary in the textbook when Holmes says, I would rather see a practitioner put this into practice than to learn all the words of wisdom. And practice is where it's at, each and every day, taking time. You think, well, do I have to take time to do that every day? Yeah, you do, really, for the most part. Why? Do you worry about taking time for eating or taking time for doing the other things that are necessary to live the life that you live? You kind of go through and do them. Well, you can still go through and do them, but do them with consciousness. Do them with intention. and take a little bit of time each day and do for yourself. Put this into practice. And the great thing about this is it is a practice. We grow, we learn, we improve. We grow, we learn, we improve. And it doesn't require that you have to donate hours and hours of each day. It starts with intention. It starts with a little bit of mindfulness and meditation, quieting the mind, a little bit of reading and studying, and then doing a little bit of what we call affirmative prayer. As you learn what that is, you put it into practice in your life. You can start with just holding a level of consciousness of intention that life is good, God is good, and you express life at the greatest and highest degree that you are meant to express it this day for you. And make something like that your affirmation for the day. Make connections. Show up at New Thought or Science of Mind centers. Take classes. We can grow. You can grow. So, moving into chapter 8, Holmes starts off with, in studying the words of Jesus, we find that he never talked about the negative conditions he wished to change. He took an opposite position. Instead of telling God how sick and poor people were, how famished and lonely they were, he affirmed the exact opposite. He told the lame to walk, the blind to see, the dumb to speak, and the deaf to hear. He commanded the waves to be still, even while they were turbulently tossing themselves around him. He was calm in the midst of the storm. There are people that believe that this man was non-human. There are people that believe that he was very much human, and everything in between. What he was a teacher. In context of the time that he taught, he was not a little radical, he was rather incredibly radical. He taught a form of facing life, if you will, expressing your place, each individual, their place within the creativeness of God, and the understanding that no one, no thing, no life was separate from God. He used words like brother, sister. He referred to the divine principle as Abba, as daddy. Okay? He didn't ask, he made statements. He stated truth. He didn't judge. He accepted people as they were, and he knew for each person and the people that he interacted with that the availability of all of God's goodness was there. And that was his life journey in teaching. He did incredible things. Now, did he do them exactly as has been recorded? We don't know. But he's not the only one that has performed incredible feats of healing, if you will. But he was an individual that did, and incorporated that in a reference of understanding of why what he did came about, and that individuals could take that and put it into practice in their life. There's a point in time where he told his disciples that they would be able to do what he did and more. He didn't anoint them with some infusion of divine power or energy. He just spoke truth to them. He sought to teach them a greater truth than what they were used to in their life. But he was a person. He walked, he spoke, he taught. And he was very aware of that and his relationship between what we call God, what he called Abba, and life itself. He was aware, my personal belief is that a much greater and higher degree of consciousness that is attainable to each and every one of us. Humanity has spent millennia telling ourselves that we're not worthy, and living out that expression through wars and strife and famines and on and on. But God is abundant. God is love. God is peace. God is harmony. You know that fear mechanism that I talked about at the beginning of today's show, the power that has in framing our perspective in consciousness. We talk about being in alignment with principle, the idea that God is love, and yet we see hate in the world. Hate comes out of that fear mechanism. Hate comes out of the physical evolutionary process that brought us to the point of recognizing our individuality, but it kept us in bondage to the caveman, cavewoman, if you will, that evolved to that point. We have to recognize that fear is, as a motivator, as a definer of how we interact in life, is a jailer. It imprisons us. It holds us in bondage. That truth, the truth of God, truth of hope, truth of love, truth of belief, peace and harmony is a reality. That there is more abundance on the world today than all of humanity could consume, no matter where or how we are. That things that are being expressed in the chaotic day-to-day life expression don't have to be. But as long as we buy into it, as long as we reaffirm that in our own fear-based belief, we add power to that. We can stop that. We may not be able to stop the world in its entirety, but we can stop it within ourselves. And that's what science of mind and spirit, the philosophy of religious science, teaches. That's what Jesus taught. Jesus was a powerful teacher, and we utilize his teaching. So you're going to hear about a lot of it as we go through this second part of the book when we get into the practice. Because he didn't lay out an instruction book, but he gave truth in his sayings, examples in his life expression. And he put road signs up for each of us as we walk and express our journey. So, in studying the words of Jesus, we find he never talked about the negative. What do you talk about in your day? Where do you and how do you interact with life? He says, when you pray or affirm your good, close the door of your consciousness to everything which denies this good. How easy is that for most of us? You know, that static in the back of our minds, those little thoughts that are there that, I got to do this, can't do that, blah, blah, blah. When you're seeking to calm your mind, I talk about it in terms of like a mindfulness meditation, just allowing that static to flatline, creating that point to where you allow yourself to open up to a way of thinking, a way of understanding that may have been foreign to you. Maybe you've experienced it coincidentally from time to time, but it's not part of your day-to-day conscious life expression. So he says, we close the door to your consciousness and to everything which denies this good, and we state our needs, not as supplications, but as an affirmation of acceptance. Spiritual mind treatment is a recognition that our good is at hand. Our good's at hand. You got up this morning, it was this day in your life, and it was just another day in the life. You got dressed, you went to work, you did your stuff. But our day is at hand. And it does. It starts in the morning before we open our eyes. We can do this. We can be this. But right now we've got to take our next commercial break, and I'll see you when we come back.
If your home floods, who will you call? When your house springs a leak, it's time to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. Clean Master will be there in 60 minutes to start fixing your home. And Clean Master bills your insurance directly, saving you the hassle because you've got enough to worry about. Clean Master also offers carpet and upholstery cleaning, carpet repair, pet odor removal, and more. Remember, Clean Master Emergency Flood Service. 559-213-9430 and visit cleanmasterflood.com. Warrior yourself a glass of Crybaby wine available at the market and Sam's Italian Deli. And remember to ask for Crybaby wine at your favorite restaurant.
Forget about the higher good of food, right? You're growing a product that people enjoy really all over the world. I mean, how does that make you feel?
I think about that all the time. I think about the families sitting around a table, enjoying a meal. I just see that what we do brings families together.
I mean, we're blessed. We're in paradise for food.
The Kern family of the Kern Family Farm invites you to eat delicious, nutritious, organic produce available at the Gnarly Carrot, located at 32954 Road 222 in North Fork, California. The Gnarly Carrot is a local, natural, seasonally changing market offering a wide range of products from local Central Valley vendors. Get your caffeine fix, grab a smoothie, and support small businesses. Learn more at kernfamilyfarm.com and visit the Gnarly Carrot today. Doctor in Sukasa allows you to connect with your doctor when you need a quick treatment. Avoid a trip to a medical clinic or emergency room and connect by video with your doctor from your home, work, or anywhere. Just go to drnsukasa.com on your phone, tablet, or computer. Dr. in Sukasa provides quality care that is convenient, bilingual, and affordable, so you are never left without access to health care. Visit drnsukasa.com today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. We're in the closing minutes of our show today. I'm going to not push too much farther in this chapter because I'm going to spend some time in this. But I want to finish this first part, this introduction that Holmes wrote. And he says, we shall not gain happiness by continuing to repeat mental patterns of unhappiness. He says, we cannot enter into the joy of living while we remain sad. And I want you to think about, have you ever been with a group of people doing something, maybe talking or whatever it could be at a social gathering, and the level of energy, may be neutral, not happy or sad. It's just joyous. It's just kind of what is. And someone enters the room, and they can either be really in high positive energy, or they can be really in low negative energy. And it's like the whole room takes on that without anybody doing anything, before that person even says anything, just with the mere fact that they entered the room in that state of consciousness. We have power within us, the power of our thought. And it goes beyond, the confines, if you will, of what lies between our two ears. That's a power that we can put into practice. We can utilize it in our day-to-day life experience. So as we move forward in the book, this is, what we're kind of laying the groundwork for now and what we'll be doing. So today I want to finish up with just this last part of this, where Holmes says, he says, the thing simmers itself down to this. Can we, in the midst of negative conditions, accept a greater good? Do you have the ability in the midst of chaos in your life to accept a greater good at that point in time? Can you accept the fact that you can be that calm in the center of the storm, and that in that calm you have a power available to you? You have a bigger God than anything that storm can bring. But you got to know it. You got to be willing to embody that as an idea, live with it as a guide, accept it as your source to move beyond, to transcend and overcome. And this is one way that we do that. He says, if we can do this, we shall be complying with the law of life. When we started the show and I talked about considering the value of this day of life that you have been gifted with, we don't think about that. It's just that it's another day. We get up but this day has value. How much would you pay? How much value would you put to have an extra day of your choice in your life. And you say, well, that's impossible. No, it's not. It's not impossible. You can create it by how you choose to live. And in creating that and making that choice, you can honor that day as the incredible gift that is yours. Matter of fact, that day could be tomorrow if you so intended it. So we'll close with this. He says, if we can, we shall be complying with this law of life. He says, we shall be giving life a chance to work for us. We often say there's one life. That life is God. That life is our life now. There is not your life and my life. We're not separate beings. We're individualized expressions of the divine principle of God. This is why going back in the power and the importance of understanding, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the future, when Jesus was talking about this concept that we love God with all our heart, all that we are, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, okay, and all our beingness, and loving our neighbor as ourselves, and there was no exceptions to that, okay. When we can put ourselves in that space within our own livingness, we can change how our life is experienced. It's a challenge that we're supposed to attempt to meet. And it's a challenge that as we spiritually seek to walk that path, the tools are available for us for the finding, for the uncovering, and for the accepting that we can put and utilize in our day-to-day life experience. And one of those tools that we can use is affirmation. So I'm going to close out with this affirmation for today that Holmes wrote here. He says, suppose every day you said to yourself, my thoughts are radiant with the light of spirit. There is no darkness in my mind. I am directed by the spirit of wisdom. I am guided into right action, into happiness and success because of the light of spirit that shines from the very center of my being, not outside me, but from my within. Okay? It said this light is God, the living Spirit Almighty. Think about, as you go through your day, you can rewind this, write it down, or you can create something in your own words in that same idea. Think of the mindset that we have to be, not to say it, anybody can say it, not to memorize it, anybody can memorize it, but to make that as an embodied consciousness, a beingness, if you will, that we not only accept, but we seek to become as we go through the day. As we do that concept, that idea of practicing the presence of God in all that we do isn't just a saying, it becomes a reality. And for each of us, as we do this, as we put this into practice in our life, you can go back to the concept, the idea of the butterfly effect, how one small, insignificant thing can affect the worldwide consciousness, beingness of the entire world, the physical expression of the world. And there's truth in that. When that concept was first presented, and it's one of those theories in physics, and it's one of those things like any theory we can see, or any principle, we can see the effects, but we really can't see the principle itself. The individual, and I don't remember his name, but he was basically laughed off the stage. But he had this idea. He said something to the effect that when a butterfly flaps its wings on the west coast of California, that the result of that is some kind of a tsunami or a hurricane or something on the other side of the world. People say, yeah, right. But there's been enough study done, and there is a lot of evidence that, that's a very powerful theory with very real effects. And that theory doesn't just hold to physics. It also holds to how we live our life. That one little thing that we did at that one time that we didn't give much thought to, that has come back to affect our life powerfully in so many ways, sometimes for the good and sometimes negatively. When we begin to live our life consciously, direct those things in our life, have an acceptance to a greater good, to an infinite power, to a purposeful guide, to that which we call the divine, which Jesus called Abba, or we can just call love, to be not only our guide, but our life, our expression itself. We are incredible beings in an incredible world with an incredible life. There's one life. That life is God. That life is our life now. I'll see you next week. As you go through the week, know the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God, it watches over you. Because wherever you are, God is there. And if God's there, wherever you are, all is well. See you next week.